There is no power structure. There is no leverage. There is no capitalism without insecurity, without incompleteness, the illusion of incompleteness.
Yeah, it's a $1 trillion industry making you feel like you're missing something.
Yeah. And we're always looking for this external validator and this piece that we can reach for externally. And the irony is, one, we need to do the work internally and look inwards. But two, we were born perfect from the beginning, and there's nothing that needs to be fixed.
Hi, my name is Aggie, and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond.
Welcome, biohackers, to another episode of Biohacking Bestie. And today we have another beautiful special guest, Shawn Wells, who I have heard of before I even met you, because every time I was at some sort of biohacking conference, everyone's like, have you heard of Shawn Wells? You're like, you're quite a legend in the industry. And I'm like, who is Shawn? And the answer was always the same. Oh, just the world's greatest formulator. I'm like, okay, duh. So then we ended up meeting in my hometown, Warsaw, and I just fell in love with you as a person because you're just such a good human. I just love you and like so genuine, and you care. And you not only make the best supplements, but I think the intention and the energy behind why you do that is what makes them the best. That's my theory, because you really, really care, and it's not very common. You're also the author of The Energy Formula, a book that has traveled with me across the world, as you can see. It's actually so informative. It's almost unfair how much information you put in there. You should be charging a lot of money for this. I was like, wow, he literally put everything here. Like, it's like a little Bible that you can just keep in your kitchen. I was like, okay, what do I take? What's good? What's not? So thank you. Thank you for putting so much free content out there, and for just showing up the way you do.
I have a course coming out soon on that whole book.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about that.
So where does one start as a formulator? Like, what? Because I know you have quite an interesting story.
Yes. Hero's journey. We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell. So my hero's journey, like a lot of us in this space, like the wounded healer thing, I had many health issues. I had a very difficult childhood. I'll just say that. I don't like to dwell on those.
I know, but I think it's so interesting because I used to be bullied in school. When I heard you share that, I was like, isn't it funny that when you're an odd one and the people can feel it and they end up bullying you, and I guess it builds resilience, but also makes you feel quite lonely.
Yeah. And, I think I'm on the spectrum to some degree, like neuroatypical. I mean, there's a lot of us out there that are intelligent, that are highly emotionally perceptive, but maybe we're awkward when we're growing up. And
or we just don't want to buy into the mainstream, or we just like, well, it doesn't resonate. I'm not going to pretend like it does.
I'm not going to be the sheep. Yeah, exactly. Very powerful. Yeah, so I did get bullied quite a bit when I was a kid for being overweight because of a lot of things that were going on at home. I tended to overeat. I also became body dysmorphic, disordered eating really bad. I went from being someone that was binge eating to being anorexic later on.
Crazy.
I went from 300 pounds to 150 pounds.
In what kind of time period?
Less than 2 years.
Wow.
That was, it was dramatic. Like, and even at 150 pounds, like it was very distorted thinking, like where I just didn't think I was lean enough.
Yeah.
And I was just bones. Like some people that would see me were just like horrified at like how I looked. And I remember like peeing and then like getting on the scale and like being excited that I was like a pound less. Or, it was just an obsession.
Wow.
Very
And I love that you share that because, again, we live in this patriarchal world when it's like, okay, it's okay for a woman to be obsessed with looks, but kind of for a man, it's a big no-no. You're just meant to look hot but not care. That right? And so for you to share that story, I was like, oh, I have so much more empathy. I guess I did never really took into account that for men, it's the expectation is still there, but there's way less understanding and.
Well, I had a big butt. I still have big legs. I have strong legs, but when I was growing up, I had the kind of female fat distribution of, the big legs, big butt. And again, I was very overweight because of overeating and binge eating and eating junk food and trying to satiate myself from all the pain I was dealing with. That it led to everyone at school, even teachers would like make fun of me, call me fat ass, fat fuck, like all these terrible things. And it beat me down. I mean, I would cry all the time. I ended up using humor, like becoming the class clown to kind of deflect and dissociate and deal with it and have some kind of connection, because it's brutal. And that led into all the disordered eating.
I wonder why kids are so brutal. Your story brought me back to my middle school. We had also a very tall, bigger guy in school. I remember a lot of the guys would make fun of him and him being kind of like closed down. And your story just brought me back to that moment, seeing him and the intimidation, the kind of like the tension that he would walk into school or any social setting. So how can one even make friends if you feel like, oh, any potential new person is going to make fun of me and just see me for my body, not for who I am. They don't really care who's on the inside.
Exactly. And, when you're rejected by the guys because you're not alpha male enough, you're not an athlete, you're not cool, and then rejected by the women because you're not attractive to them. And then even like when it was okay for like when I was coming up for teachers to even like join it, like it's horrifying now, but like, I would get made fun of by teachers. I remember one French teacher would make fun of me all the time. And those are the things I was dealing with. So like I had a very poor self-image, and I was already shaken in terms of my identity from my childhood and years of abuse. So I ended up becoming depressed, suicidal, again, disordered eating, body dysmorphia, and then that led into a lot of autoimmune issues because I just hated my body and I was doing abusive things to myself, gaslighting myself
just
about how disgusting I was. Like I was telling myself that all the time, that you're not good enough, you're disgusting. I literally dreamed of taking like knives or cleavers and like cutting fat, hacking fat off my body because I just hated my body.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have this theory that we store fat because we don't feel safe.
Yeah.
It's our like safety suit.
Totally.
And the more unsafe you feel in this world when you go around and every single person is just a threat, you're going to put on more weight. I have goosebumps saying this because I really feel like it's such a catch-22 because you will never lose weight if you're imagining yourself with a knife cutting it off. Like,
agreed. That's why like, all this biohacking and supplementation and paleo and keto, all the things I did were amazing steps along the process, but probably the most profound one for me was when I did my first psychedelic journey and learned to literally love myself for the first time.
You just touched on so many things. Number one, I feel like nothing makes sense. No biohacking in the world, no losing weight, if you're doing it from a place of hate, right? Like even supplements. If you take a supplement, you're like, oh, metabolism booster because I'm so fat and like terrible. Or you can take that. I'm like, let me support my body. It's doing so much for me. That's going to be just like a little boost for me to feel better, right? Two different energies to go behind. And if you don't truly love yourself, it doesn't matter if you're going to be 120 pounds with your height or I'm going to be 80. It's never going to be good enough. And I'm sure you can tell that you losing all that weight didn't make you happy because it's not about the weight.
Exactly. And this is where, originally biohacking was kind of ultra masculinized, the Ben Green, no offense, like Ben Greenfield to these guys because they're my friends, but Ben Greenfield, Dave Asprey, Tim Ferriss, whoever, like all these guys are like trying to do the most extreme things and like, I'm gonna
pulling a muscle, right? Like,
yeah,
Tim Ferriss got this like TED talk where I'm like, oh, this is where I'm pulling my muscle.
yeah, and injecting urine, and it's like, what is that? Like the more crazy it gets, like the more like masculine and cool and biohacking and extreme it is. Like, who's the most extreme, and like who's injecting the most needles, taking the most pills, and there is stuff to be learned out of that. That's the kind of new technology that we should employ, we should understand. But there's also like going back into self-care and ancient wisdom. And the feminine is now coming into health optimization, or if you want to call it biohacking, where we're now looking at sun gazing and forest bathing and journaling and breath work and, plunges and, all these different things that we're doing. Like intimacy. I mean, intimacy, like how important is that? Not just, sex, and like guys tend to think of sex as like performance and like, I got to knock it out.
Yeah.
You get kind of graphic here, but it's like, it's like we're rating ourselves. And this is like the biohacking thing. Like, what's your score? Like, how much money do you make? How big is your penis? Like, what kind of car do you drive? Like, it's like everything's a metric. And like, we don't take a step back and like, are you enjoying your life? Like, are you connecting with this other person? Are you connected to yourself? Do you love yourself? So for me, that's where I was my whole life, was just on these metrics and gaslighting myself if I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I love that, through this path of psychedelics, that I finally learned to love myself for the first time. It was like, it may sound like if I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm going to say like, hey, you should love yourself, you're going to say, yep.
Yeah, I heard that before.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, like, right. Like that makes sense, but it's a whole different thing when you anchor it and feel it.
Yeah. So let's go there.
Yeah.
So let's paint a picture. Where were you? How did it happen?
It was New Year's Eve, right before COVID, going into 2020. I was at a celebrity's house with a lot of celebrities, and I actually was feeling my imposter syndrome as a result. A lot
of celebrities just before you came in, you shared quite a few names. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, everybody.
Yeah.
Without name dropping.
Yeah. I do. I do know, but it's like at the same time, like I think to a certain point, especially at this point in my life, like I was always compensating, kind of going back to the demeasuring concept that I was talking about before. Like I'd always walk in the room and like, hey, I'm Shawn Wells. I'm the world's greatest formulator, and I've done this and this and this. And I give someone my resume, and they're like, okay, like cool. Like it was very compensatory and like very insecure, and that was the place I was coming from. But this was like such a big room that I was like, I kind of just like shriveled up and like kind of kept quiet like the whole time. And
interrupt, but it's also funny how it shows you the point of view. If you walk into a room of celebrities and you feel like you're not big enough, it just shows that you still look at the value of people through the lens of how much money they have.
Great point.
Right? Because if success means money and fame to you, you're going to feel not, equal. If success means I just fucking love myself, then you feel like,
totally
great, that person doesn't look
totally.
Themselves out, right?
100%. I have 100% evolved to what you're talking about now, but it's taken some work. But yeah, like I ended up doing around 5 grams. And like, so I went in like pretty deep.
5 grams of
psilocybin.
Okay.
So I had, I was like seeing things move and the colors and like, someone walked up, like I was like in a cuddle puddle too. Like I was in a very platonic marriage at the time. This is part of what I ended up working through. We ended up doing a conscious uncoupling. She's still a best friend, a business partner. Still love her very much, but we got divorced is the idea of conscious uncoupling, but with love. We actually did a session with a very famous psychotherapist that uses MDMA, and we had the most like loving separation ceremony. But anyway, like a lot of that came out of that. But I didn't.
So I want to hear more about that.
I didn't know how to love myself. I was gaslighting myself all the time. I did hate my body. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. I was on, Ben Greenfield and TV and all these things. And it was always like, okay, Ben Greenfield, I got to get on Joe Rogan. If I got on this TV station, I got to get on that TV station. It's like I was on this stage in front of 10. I need to get in front of 20,000. I made this much money. I need to get double that next year. Like I got this car. It's exhausting.
And
it doesn't stop. There's always someone better, bigger, whatever. And that's
I'm sorry to say, but no wonder your marriage didn't work out because
for sure.
you will never, if you didn't love yourself, you can't,
100%.
let the other person love you.
100%. And yeah, I mean, she was, still is a wonderful person that I'm very connected to. But yeah, it was always platonic too. And but you're right. I mean, I didn't have the capacity to
receive love.
Therefore couldn't give love to myself or others. I mean, I would say that I was very caring and compassionate, but it was also like draining, because I wasn't learning how to fill myself up in the process.
Yeah, because you did it from a place of trying to prove to others that.
Yeah, people pleasing, obligation. Yeah, exactly. So when I got in this space and I was in this cuddle puddle and I had a mom of twins that was a medical doctor that just sat next to me and watched me. And she was there for me and held space for me. And I felt like because of that allowed me to lean in because this feminine, caring, clinical mom energy was there. And she was very just beautiful as well. She was just kind of all the things. And it was just the perfect person to allow me to go deep. And then I had people kind of laying around me because I was just in the middle of this floor in the living room where they had kind of put down sometimes you call it a pallet of, pillows and blankets and all the things. And I couldn't move because I was just way in. All these other people, I think, took about half what I was taking. So they were kind of laying next to me, coming in and out. It would be one of those time lapse things that you might see in a movie where it's people are kind of coming in and out and in and out and in and out. And I'm just but it was amazing because I was just mind blown, that first time, when you go into that space and it's safe and you're doing it with the right facilitators, which I did. And I'm still best friends with these facilitators today. And I've gone through probably 50 journeys with them. All over the world, all kinds of medicines. Because I'm a biochemist, I wanted to explore them all and understand them all and do a lot of kind of internal work. But I came out of that experience wow, people were laying next to me and telling me all these amazing things and were being so loving. And I didn't tell them who I was. I didn't tell them why I was important. And I was like, they loved me for me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's possible. I always thought love was conditional. Love had to be earned. Love is fleeting. It's always just out of your reach. Yeah, it's earned. And this idea of I can just have love and give love and it doesn't need to be earned and I can just be myself. I don't have to do, I can just be. For me, that was I remember just everyone else was asleep and I was just staring at the ceiling oh my God. That was the most profound epiphany, serendipitous, just for it to come in, it was mind blowing, anchored to my heart, forever changed. And it sounds so simple to tell someone this idea, but it's so different when you truly feel it.
So you're a biochemist. Obviously, your entire life is built around science.
Yeah.
And here you are taking plant medicine, right? So I somehow end up talking about plant medicine almost on every podcast.
Great.
Because I grew up in Poland with this idea that, they're drugs. Even up until this day, my mom's like, you're still taking those drugs? I'm like, Mom, it's ayahuasca, it's plant medicine. It's not exactly drugs. And to me, I wouldn't take half of the things that are in the pharmacy.
Right.
Yet they are normalized.
Right.
I had an eye surgery. I was given kind of like narcotic that takes away the pain that got me really depressed, even though I took it for 4 or 5 days. I'm trying to remember the name. What do you take for pain?
Oxycontin.
Yeah.
Yeah, benzos and opioids will just wreck you.
Yeah, it's okay. But then plant medicine that can really have a profound impact on the soul level. Like it changes the whole vibration and makes you not buy into the mainstream bullshit, because mainstream bullshit is you need to earn love. I only care who you are if you're successful, make money, do something with your life. If you're just yourself, you're not worthy my attention. Like, who are you almost in a way? Like, you don't deserve the space, whatever. So just like healing from that is really beautiful. And it's not to say that we're just going to hide in the forest and never do anything with our lives. We're just going to do what we do from a very different place. Right?
There is no power structure. There is no leverage. There is no capitalism without insecurity, without incompleteness, the illusion of incompleteness.
Yeah, it's a $1 trillion industry making you feel like you're missing something.
Yeah. And we're always looking for this external validator and this piece that we can reach for externally. And the irony is, one, we need to do the work internally and look inwards. But two, we were born perfect from the beginning, and there's nothing that needs to be fixed. Like, it's like God is all around you, but like God is within.
Yeah. I always have such a interesting time trying to explain biohacking, because yes, human optimization is the official explanation, and it's very Ben Greenfield, Dave Asprey, and I love Dave. Like, he's amazing, but I also feel like where's that feminine, gentle energy of like,
Totally.
What if biohacking is unlearning everything you were told
100%.
and just listening to your gut?
100%. I'm a formulator. I'm a biochemist, a dietitian, nutritionist, and I can tell you that those things matter way less than loving yourself and your mindset. If you're to look at the blue zones, like where people are super centenarians that live past 100, a lot of these people, yes, there are some cleaner diets. They're not eating like ultra processed food and those kinds of things. But these are people that might drink, that might smoke, that might, drink coffee all day, or, have 10 p.m. dinners, like, these kinds of things. But what is it? Well, it tends to be in these areas that they live by the water, which is very powerful. A lot of masculine, feminine. There's like the power of the ocean, but the healing of the ocean, I think, is like very masculine, feminine. They slow down a lot. These are not people that live by clocks. We're so conditioned that we're always late. We need to be somewhere.
Guilty of it.
And, if you tend to go to these places, there's island time, or, I lived in Costa Rica for a year, and, they're always like just so chill, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of live half of my time in Bali, because it's like, if you get one thing done a day, that's good.
Yeah.
And I come with this like Western attitude, and Balinese people were just like looking at me like I'm a crazy woman. And then after a month, I kind of settle in, and I just, get used to it. But isn't it funny that we have this idea that we're so unhappy in the Western world, yet we go to all these cultures and tell them to live faster,
Totally.
even though they're super happy?
Yeah, in Costa Rica, they say pura vida, and it means like pure life. Like, but it's like, it's kind of like, yeah, it's actually like if you like, show up late, people are like, pura vida, it's kind of like F it, it's like, it is what it is. Like, I'm going to show when I show. And it's very different. And, certainly when you're at restaurants, like, a waiter might take an hour to bring out your food, and that's the way it is. Like, you just have to surrender to it.
And surrender.
Yes.
So like a beautiful translation of like surrender to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very much. I'm definitely the queen of a perfect, movie in my head. this is how it's supposed to happen. And the only tattoo I ever got is 11/11, which is trust the timing. It's always the perfect timing, not the timing I thought is ideal for me.
Yeah, in Peru, there's the three animals are kind of like the key energies. And there's the puma, which is, the masculine, the chase it, go get it, which we need to be in sometimes. Absolutely. We need to hustle. I think the broken idea is hustle and grind that like Gary Vee promoted. It's kind of like masculine, ultra masculine, or like sympathetic nervous system, ultra sympathetic nervous system.
Or I dare to say even like wounded masculine, to a point of like too controlling and too hustling.
They talk about wounded puma, actually. Like, yeah. And then there's the snake, which is like grounded, but it's like can shed its skin. So it's transformation. And then there's the feminine energy of the condor, which flies the highest of all the birds in the world. And it's kind of, like the bird's eye view and is soaring above it all. And that's a powerful place to be too. Wow. It's a place of
the bird's eye view, just having this perspective of your life.
Yeah. And then learning how to like kind of flow between, like the idea of the flow state is like where you're sympathetic and parasympathetic at the same time, where you're relaxed, but you're stimulated. And that's such a beautiful place to be, where you're in your flow, you're moving in between, right? It's not just the space in between, it's that you can move back and forth with ease. You can be puma when you need to be, but you can be, it's just like these animals that are so relaxed and playful, but, F with them and they'll take your life. It's like, that's the energy. And that's a beautiful thing. So, as I've been doing this work, these are the things I've been learning. I've actually built out, like when I was in Poland and then Estonia, I talked about my supplement stacks around psychedelics. So I've been doing like a lot of work there as well.
Amazing. So when it comes to supplements, that now that you mention it, waste of money or a good investment?
I think a great investment. I mean, I believe in them. I take many supplements. I don't take as many as I used to, and I can get into maybe why that is, but our diet definitely requires a supplement. Like when people are like, oh, you don't need supplements, you can get it from the diet. Like our foods, I don't care if you're buying organic, I can show you there's data that looks at like every 10 years where they show like the depletion in the soil of all these minerals. And then if you look at like the top 10, this one study looked at like the top 10 fruits and vegetables, and they show about a 40% decline in the past 50 years of all these vitamins and minerals.
I think people don't realize that it's like the vegetable is as good as the soil.
Right.
It's like if the soil is not nutrient dense and it's depleted, you're not really getting a ton of that food. So I think it's one of the big reasons why we overeat, because we eat for nutrients. We don't eat for pleasure and nutrients. So if your body eats, it's like, well, I'm depleted. You will constantly like keep opening the fridge and looking for nutrients, because your body needs energy, it needs the minerals, the building blocks, the protein, the whatnot. And, we're just not getting it from the food that is available in the store.
But here's the thing that takes it up many more notches is think about our EMF exposure with like Wi-Fi and 5G and all these different waves that are coming through, cosmic radiation that's coming through in ways that it wasn't before. We have more than 10,000 chemicals that are being introduced every year. We have no idea what they do and how they're affecting us. And we certainly have no idea how, when combined, they affect us.
Yeah. They say an average woman is exposed to 168 chemicals a day. A day.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if you had good quality food, I'm like, it's impossible to even like...
Exactly.
Like if you're not thriving, and I always say that this is not your fault. And on my website, I have this, Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
And Robert Williams, and
it's not your fault.
Matt Damon,
yeah, it's
not your fault. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, no, it's really not your fault.
Yeah.
And I think internalizing the blame for your weight, for how you look, how you feel, and feeling you're broken is the biggest thing that I'm trying to unlearn, to help people unlearn, because it's not your fault. If you're overweight, if you have acne, if you have hormonal issues, if you're infertile, it's not your fault. Like your body's just responding to this screwed up environment that we live in. And all we're trying to do is unlearn and like remove all of that shit from your body.
We're getting attacked every day, and then we're attacking ourselves because we're not good enough.
Yeah, which your body's like, I'm just doing the best I can. And as like you say in a book, the biggest currency is energy, but we don't have the energy to even educate ourselves because we're so tired that if I say like, hey, just learn biohacking, you're like, I can't be asked. I'm so tired right now that if you ask me to learn one more thing, I just can't because I don't have the capacity or I don't feel smart enough or I have a brain fog. I remember, I don't know if you saw my photos from 2019 with like, I had hair falling out in patches, overweight, acne. If someone told me, hey, biohacking's great, I would be like, yeah, great. But I go from one coffee to another. I have a brain fog. I don't think I can do it.
That's called decision fatigue. When you're just like exhausted, you're not going to making better decisions takes more energy.
Yeah.
When you have decision fatigue because you are fatigued, because you have what's called insufficient cellular energy and all this kind of stuff, you can go through the science of it, but basically you're exhausted and you're going to go for whatever's easiest and pleases you in the moment. Yeah. And that's going to be, junk food, porn, like alcohol, like quick dopamine hits. And that's where we are.
And what annoys me as well is that like I see those reels when girls sitting on the couch eating a bag of chips and ice cream, and it's just like it's normal to be PMSing and eating a tub of ice cream right before your period. And I'm thinking, no, it's common and it's normalized, but it's not normal. Like if your hormones are balanced, you shouldn't feel that way, right? You shouldn't feel like you want to die. Like I think our default is thriving, even if you tend to maybe want to eat a little bit more carbs before your period. But now I know my hormones are regulated. I don't feel like eating a tub of ice cream and a bag of chips and like dying and whatnot. It just comes from this regulated progesterone, right?
Well, there's also like, why are you even thinking about it as like I'm PMSing, like it's some disease? Like I'm thinking about like this sloughing of like the uterine wall, like that's like you're releasing and detoxifying and preparing, and that you can hold a baby, create a baby inside of you. Yeah. That is like the greatest miracle in life, and the ultimate thing that we do is creation, and that is the feminine energy. Like when we create art, we certainly create another life and then sustain that life and protect that life. I mean, there's nothing more powerful. And during these different phases, you have feminine superpowers. And, we're already working on something along these lines. But you have intuition. When you have some of that internalization and kind of, dampening that you want to like remove yourself from outside forces and socialization, that's when your intuition's at the highest. Yeah. There's superpowers that women have. I mean, all people have, but women have through this cycle that is getting just dubbed, oh, I'm irritable, I'm cranky, I'm a B word, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, who told you that? Like,
well, because it's become so common, right? And we buy into that idea that, that's our kryptonite. You have your period. Oh, that sucks for you.
Yeah.
If you were a man, like your life would be so much easier, which is literally what I thought my entire life until about 3 years ago. That I'm like, I ovulate and you don't. This is my superpower, Shawn. Sorry. Like that's my unfair advantage. I'm going to use it to my benefit as much as possible instead of like, feeling like I should be ashamed that I ovulate or that I menstruate and whatnot. So I love that you are so involved. And little sneak peek, I have asked Shawn about 3 months ago if he would kindly agree to create something for Biohacking Bestie and for my audience. And I dreamed of this perfect supplement for women. And how was making the supplement?
It's amazing. And I mean, I can tell you, it's very involved. Packaging, we can talk about this more in detail. I mean, packaging is unique. what
I
we're
guess the
what we're
formula-
going to execute like really has never been done. Can I tell a little bit of
Yeah,
it?
yeah, of course,
Okay,
of course.
okay.
I'm really curious, like how the behind the scenes of the formula, because when you were telling,
Yes.
yeah,
Um,
what did it look like? We're in your apartment.
well, I mean, I'm already like a biochemist and have done worked 10 years clinically. I think I'm very astute along a lot of these lines, and
Did you see how many epic formulas that you have?
over
created?
1,000.
Over 1,000 formulas.
Yeah.
And Aggie comes along and she's like, do you want us to do something for hormone for women? And Shawn's like, fuck, that was hard.
Yes, it is the most challenging project I've ever done, and I've done a lot of things. But no, I'm very passionate about it I'm passionate about what you're doing and your platform, and a challenge is exciting to me, and really bring about change and to support women and show them their superpower. And so I wanted to make something that there was one capsule for each day, for each phase of the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So we have and we're going to explain what each one does on each day, and like why this is supporting you to reinforce you using it every day, but you understanding your body, not just understanding the supplement and the ingredient and how those support you, but understanding how you have these superpowers and how this is optimizing you, energizing you, and putting you at your best so that you can live your best life. And that's
Which is your birthright, by the way.
your birthright.
And this thriving should be your default, and we're here to support it. I am very curious because when you look at the little graph of all the hormones, it's like luteinizing hormone, follicle,
FSH, LH.
FSH, yes. And then on top of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone.
Yeah.
Most women don't even know they have testosterone, but we do. And so it's like, okay, this would be good for this. Oh, wait, but this is going down, this is going up. There's so much happening throughout the month that I'm very curious of how did you decide what to put when? Because then on top of that, we have hormones that are produced in the pineal gland, ovaries, adrenals, right? That also has an impact. And then we metabolize some of our hormones through our guts. So gut support would also be great. And then there's glucose, right? So if glucose is out of whack, our sex hormones will be out of whack.
Yeah, I literally went through all like what you're talking about. I looked at the graphs of all the different hormones that are going on the endocrine cascade. Like hormones affect other hormones in this cascade. Like this is like the idea of homeostasis, right? And then these hormones affect neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters affect hormones. So I'm looking at all these things and saying what would support these, what would optimize these, what would play up those things that are strong. Like to your point, like when our testosterone is up at being a woman during the cycle, that's a good time to be in the gym and maximizing your strength, your weightlifting, your weight training. And, again, like when you're kind of going inwards, when estrogen is elevated and progesterone is elevated and testosterone's down, and this is a good time to pull it in. And there may be issues with sleep, there may be issues with mood, but like I address those things with certain, like I have a natural SSRI in here.
What's the SSRI
for? So that's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and there's,
Of course.
it just allows more serotonin to be circulating. But I don't like the idea of them being chronically used, like a lot of these drugs. So this is a natural one. And this gets into the whole idea, just like the idea of what's going on with our bodies during this menstrual cycle, of this kind of flow, right? Like these waves are happening, and it's very, female in that idea of flow and waves and, ebb and, wax and wane, like the moon, all these kinds of things.
The moon is seasons, right? Like,
Right.
we live in nature and it's very seasonal, and yet we expect humans to
Exactly. So my supplementation is like the same, like where it's not like you're just getting one thing like all 28 days. It's like addressing this, and there's kind of the ebb and flow of all these nutrients as well that are kind of matched up to these waves. So I'm like really excited about this. Is actually something that I want to do that really I believe could shake up supplementation that's never been done on a broader level. Is yes, there's personalization, but I believe that when you're supplementing the same level every day, and I get the idea that it's, this was the dose used in the study. So we have to make claims, we have to use this dose from the study, and they need to take it for the, 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is. But what I would like to do is pyramid up, pyramid down. And this is kind of the idea of the waves of all of these nutrients so that they don't become your status quo. They don't become your baseline.
Which is, I guess, the mistake I did when I first started biohacking. Same thing every day, every month. Now I'm gotten to a point in my life where I feel like I intuitively pick what I need today or this week.
That's how I've been supplementing is intuition.
It's crazy. It sounds so woo-woo. I'm like, I feel like the old me, if she heard it, she would be like, she's crazy. But you really feel like, I used to take magnesium every day. Now I'm like, it doesn't feel like the right thing today. Or like, I want this, I want that. It's kind of amazing, kind of like that feminine energy. Like, I think women as herbalists and the ones that are like, they would be the one in the village, in the tribe, like, you're not feeling well, or you're like low energy, let me give you this, this, and that. It wasn't just one size fits all that, this is you.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you as a guy talks about it because it's so rare.
Right. No, it's unfortunate that, I mean, this is where the world will never succeed unless the feminine and masculine are optimized. And I mean this not only with us as people, and unfortunately we're getting told that we're all the same. And that's a ridiculous concept that, I mean, if you look in nature and you look through the last whatever millions of years, this idea is ridiculous. That we have our own strengths and we need to rely on each other, just like sex can't happen without a penis and a vagina. I mean, that's the beauty of masculine and feminine energy. And like, that's kind of the most rudimentary like example of that, but we can't succeed without that. And we need that in ourselves too. We need to tap into the masculine and the feminine. We need to be the puma sometimes, but we also need to be the condor. Like as a man, yes, it's great to have drive, but I also need self-care. And as a woman, you may have self-care and intuition, but there's times that you got to get in the hustle.
Yeah, I mean, I would never be able to film any of this without the hustle part, because it's like organizing and putting myself together and like obviously, like, yeah.
But by and large, your strengths will be more on the intuition side and the surrender side.
Yeah.
And, we'll be like a little bit more on the logic side and the drive side. And together, we can be very successful. There isn't like one that's better.
Yeah.
We need both to succeed. We need both to be healthy as a society, as a person, as a couple. Like, whether you're, even if you're a lesbian couple or a gay couple, you still need those masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah. Or the polarity, right?
Yes, like, the polarity,
like
exactly.
In sex, like sex can't happen, I guess, without the feminine and the masculine, right? Because it's like, and switching those energies it's a lot of fun, especially for same-sex couples. But without the polarity, there isn't that fraction and distraction that creates fire.
The push and the pull, like all of that. Like that's how the universe works.
Yeah. And so going back to supplements, so imagine I'm thinking the Aggie from 2019 is listening to this, already has the awareness that, feeling sick is not what she wants to, be okay with anymore. Where do you start supplementing, right? And so a lot of doctors, like that's the thing, you go to a doctor and they're going to say things that not exactly would align with my point of view. I would be super curious to hear your take on where does one start with supplementing and what are the common mistakes?
Yeah. I mean, the one problem that you see with medication, typically the things that are patentable are these things, they'll look at an enzyme, they'll learn how to block that enzyme, and then that's the pathway, that's the patent. And it's just like when you dam a river or something like that, like you're kind of blocking this pathway from happening. The body will homeostatically like learn how to like, how do we get ourselves back to balance? How do we get ourselves like around this barrier? And that's what happens. Like these medications like tend to work for a week or two, but then what happens for the next month, 6 months, year, this is when you get like the 30-second, like fast talking, like laundry list of side effects in these commercials, because you're not supposed to like block these pathways. That's not healthy long-term to do. And that's where
I have to just mention birth control, because
yes,
it's been given to women as a drug to, you know, it's funny when you look at the history of birth control, it was prescribed for temporary use of a few months. It's something that women are on for decades. Number one question, like, I've been on birth control for 20 years because X, Y, and Z, and my doctor said that it's the only cure for endometriosis, but it doesn't cure endometriosis or anything. It just blocks.
No, and really something like DIM, diindolylmethylene, would be
from broccoli, right?
Yeah, would be a lot better. Ketogenic diet could potentially help with that. Yeah, exactly. And that isn't the best way, like affecting estrogen, like estrone and beta estradiol, progesterone, permanently altering these hormonal milieus is going to have this downstream impact. It's not meant to work like that.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of times it's these synthetic chemicals and synthetic hormones that we're putting in our bodies that it's just confusing our body and poisoning our body. So absolutely. And this is why, again, you see all these side effects, and that's not healthy to be on these things long term. This is why Western medicine is so good at acute care. You know, if I want something to help me for a week, yes. If I get in a car accident, yes. But long term, Western medicine is horrible. And this is where Eastern medicine very much prevails, because it's holistic. It's taking in the whole idea, the whole image, the whole person. And how do we put someone in balance and not push them to extremes that are way out of balance that will cause their body to be irreparably damaged?
Yeah. It's so interesting, because I saw this video. There's this doctor on TikTok and Instagram, and he basically makes fun of other people that promote, I guess, holistic approach to nutrition. And his line is always, "Hey, if this was true, it would be called science, but because it's not, it's the Eastern medicine or whatever it's called." And it annoys me, because it's like, I think the Western medicine doesn't take into consideration the fact that whether you're happy or not with your life, what is actually your diet. I have a lot of girlfriends who had even cancer, and they haven't been told, change your diet. They're like, kind of like, just stay as you are. We're going to do chemo. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Have your white bread. And
they're not told about ketosis, which would enhance the efficacy of chemo or radiation. That's been shown, like, would stop the growth, because cancer is a metabolic disease, stop the growth and proliferation of cancer.
What does it mean, metabolic disease? Because in the book, you basically say that most of the disease in the Western world are metabolic diseases, and if you fix your metabolism in a way, you're going to heal, right? And so what's a metabolic disease?
People tend to think of metabolism as, diets and, things like that, weight loss, but metabolism just means it's something that's happening in your body, like something's being processed, broken down, changed, altered, and all these things are happening on a daily basis. It's different than something that's genetic, and this is who you are, you're programmed, you're damned.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe 1% of disease is like born in genetic,
mm-hmm.
and 99% of disease is metabolic in nature, meaning we can change it. It changes. And with our metabolism, we have epigenetic changes, which like constantly in flux. So even our genes are changing per our metabolism. So really, like 99% of disease is changeable. And it's based on what we're doing day to day with nutrition, with working out, with what we're being exposed to. with our mindset.
Yeah.
So it's all very changeable. And 87% of people are metabolically dysfunctional. That means that we're mitochondrially impaired. And that's getting into that idea that I was talking about before. The acronyms ICE is insufficient cellular energy syndrome. Or in the brain, it's called brain energy gap, where we're not making enough ATP to run our body. ATP is the energy currency that's made by the mitochondria. And this is why I believe that if you were to back up the metabolic dysfunction, then you're basically getting into mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, okay, so mitochondria, because it's a very fancy word and people might be scared to hear it or to use it. Mitochondria is like we have cells, and in those cells we have those little powerhouses, and these are the fancy word to say that this is the powerhouse of every one of your cells.
Yeah, and it makes the adenosine triphosphate, the ATP, that currency for energy in the body. And you may remember whatever it is, 7th grade biology, and like you're saying, the powerhouse of the cell. And in these diagrams, we tend to see one mitochondria, but the more energy intensive the cell is, the more mitochondria there are. There's up to 5,000 mitochondria in a cell. So in a cardiomyocyte, a heart cell, you're going to see 5,000 mitochondria.
This is so exciting. So I think, okay, so in layman's term, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I am tired because I just had a really bad diet and, I'm just like eating a lot of carbs. So I'm on this glucose roller coaster up and down. My go-to when I wake up is to have coffee, right? Because
caffeine and sugar, because they've actually shown that when you wake up and you have less than 6.5 hours of sleep, that you're insulin resistant in the brain. This is metabolic dysfunction in the brain, which means you're essentially insulin resistant in the brain, which means you're essentially type 3 diabetic, which means...
Type 3 diabetic.
Type 3 diabetic, which means that's the same as Alzheimer's in the brain, acutely.
Okay, so what's type 3 diabetes?
That's Alzheimer's. That's Alzheimer's.
Because I heard that, like, for example, PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries, right? Yep. Which is basically when a lot of women it's like so common. I don't think I have a girlfriend who didn't have hormonal issues. And that's like half of them have PCOS, which is, again, all of us on a vegan diet, starting our day with oat milk latte and a smoothie, followed by some mush food that we never chew anymore because, everything's so processed. And so, right, my go-to is going to be first coffee. So I'm thinking of myself in 2018. I wake up, I have a coffee first thing in the morning, and then 2 hours later, crash. So I have another coffee.
Yep.
Then there's 2 p.m. and I'm like, oh, I need some sugar because I need to like get it going. But then the evening comes and I'm like, oh my God, where's the cat videos and the Netflix and scrolling on Instagram? And I'm constantly tired.
Exactly.
I would go to bed. So what is happening?
So your brain cells, your neurons are insulin resistant acutely because you didn't get enough sleep. And so those synapses are firing slower, like where, that electrical signal that's going across these like dendrites, these like little arms from cell to cell, axons and dendrites. And, in these neurons, they're like communicating. It's like an electrical signal. They're actually firing slower. So the idea of like brain fog is true because the electrical signal is dampened and you're not able to take in glucose as well to make ATP. So you're literally in the state of brain energy gap or insufficient cellular energy. And that's because of that insulin resistance in these cells. So you're acutely diabetic in your brain when you're not getting enough sleep.
And so is it true that when I drink coffee or when I have caffeine, it's almost like the caffeine's blocking the receptors telling my brain that I'm tired? But if I work with some sort of nootropics that feeds the mitochondria of every one of my cells, that energy is kind of coming from my every single cell feeling energized. And so I don't have just like a brain energy, I have like a full body energy.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's dead on. So it's adenosine inhibition. Adenosine is the molecule.
I explained it, and this is how Shawn explains.
No, it's great. I mean, it's great. So adenosine is the thing that makes you tired, that like initiates sleepiness.
Is that a hormone or is that just a
neurochemical? Yeah. So it's going to, when it's inhibited, you're going to be more wakeful. But that is like a come at a cost kind of thing. And here's what's interesting, because I have an ingredient that I patented that's a metabolite of caffeine.
I want to talk about, that's where I'm getting with this.
But 60% of us are slow metabolizers of caffeine.
What does it mean?
Okay, so there's something called the CYP1A2 gene that you can test with, some of these DNA tests. And this has to do with your liver and what's called the cytochrome P450 pathway, how you break chemicals down.
And how sensitive you are to caffeine, basically.
Specifically, this 1A2, yeah, exactly. This gene is associated with how you break down caffeine. And the difference is massive. And this is true of like almost everything. This is why studies that are done on 18 to 22-year-old healthy males doesn't apply, because even in those groups, there's people that drop out. There's people on one side and that are called, there's super responders, and then or hyper responders, and then there's hypo responders or non-responders. Yeah. And then you end up with like this statistical average, and that's what gets reported.
Exist, yeah.
And so even in this like kind of tight group of homogeneousness, it's still like widely varied, right? Like we're not looking at females very much, and it does add to cost, add to complication. Like I conducted hundreds of studies, and it would be great to have more data, but it is more difficult, honestly.
To conduct data on women.
Yeah. Because they're harder to recruit. One, there is the menstrual cycle difference that is a powerful one, and has a powerful impact on the physiology day to day. So it's you need to account for that, and very few studies do, and it ends up costing 3 or 4 times as much for a study to do it well.
Which means that in general, whenever you hear a study, the chances are the study was conducted on college
age men. So, and it's also not conducted on 50-year-old men. It's not, whatever. And it's, so
just keep that in mind, that it's like, there's a study, but also there's your intuition. And there is also like, it just feels right for me to like listen to that person, or like, this feels like this is something that I perhaps should pursue. Because the two things,
no, it's awesome.
There's too many things.
That's awesome. So
that's good.
So the half-life of caffeine, meaning like how long it takes to clear about half of it out of your body. So think about like you go to half, and then another half-life goes to a quarter, and another half-life goes to an eighth, and another half-life goes to a 16th, like that. Just to get to half is, for some people, 1.5 hours. For some people, 10.5 hours, like whatever that is, a 7-fold difference. It's a massive difference. Someone could, for all extents and purposes, like clear it out of their body in 8 hours. That's a fast metabolizer. And someone else, it could be 3 days. This is a huge difference. And this is why we're all experiencing this compound very differently. So for some of us, like especially slow metabolizers like me, like I'm getting like the brain fog, the irritability, the sleep disruption, and all these kinds of things that are going on and when we look at studies, whether it's performance studies with cognitive or physiologic performance, we see that too. Like we just see this statistical average for years, but we didn't understand why it was like so varied. And now we see that the slow metabolizers actually have a negative impact that impairs their performance, both physical performance and cognitive performance. And fast metabolizers show it's, improved to some degree. But this is true of also like heart attacks and strokes. When we look at slow metabolizers, we see more heart attacks and strokes. When we look at fast metabolizers, we actually see a slight improvement. Wow. So this is where the data is confusing. And I have a chemical that's a metabolite, meaning like caffeine can convert into 3 different things in the body. And one of them is very special. It gives you really all the benefits that you're looking for with I mean this without hyperbole, like without the side effect. Like it's very clean experience in a way that you've never experienced the upside like this, and you won't have the downside. It's just a super clean nootropic experience. That's amazing. We've shown that it increases BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is an exciting protein that's associated with neuroplasticity. So that's kind of like your cognitive resilience. Like when we're depressed, we have very low BDNF.
Oh, wow.
And BDNF actually not only protects neurons, but creates new ones. So new brain cells. So this is the way to keep the brain young. So it's very exciting on how to increase BDNF. And actually doing things like brain games and Sudoku and taking a different way to work and learning a new language and learning a new instrument and eating different foods and traveling and, doing things that force yourself to step outside of yourself and learn something new, using your toothbrush in the other hand, like putting your belt through the opposite way, like these
Jim Quick, I love Jim Quick.
Yeah, these kinds of things are neuroplasticity, right? He loves neuroplasticity. So that's key. That's being raised by paraxanthine, this ingredient. Glutathione and catalase are being increased, key antioxidants, and decreased oxidative stress, increased nitric oxide to the brain, so more blood flow, increased dopamine, which is protective to the brain, and in particular with like Parkinson's, decreased beta amyloid plaque, protecting against Alzheimer's. So like this compound is super amazing, and then we don't see the side effects.
And also just if it's dopamine, right? Like our cravings are linked to dopamine.
Yeah.
If we're dopamine efficient, you're going to crave more food because it comes from a place of like a craving versus just it's not hunger. So,
right. And this is more of like a sustained dopaminergic experience where you're going to feel like confidence and swagger and productivity, but you're not going to feel like that high and low that like, like we do when we're using Instagram or porn or lottery or food or, whatever we're medicating ourselves.
So exciting. I feel like the psycho support is not the only supplements we get to work on, because I feel like this is just so exciting.
But going back to your point on mitochondria, like I can speak on those, like some supplements that people could add. I do love that idea of supporting the mitochondria. It's the most exciting thing to me. So NAD, you probably heard of NADIVs. That is a key cofactor in creating ATP through the cycle, through your Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, whatever you want to call it. So how do we increase NAD? Because as we age, we make less NAD. As we're exposed to alcohol, poor sleep, stress, poor food, like all these things lower our NAD production. And then as we age, there's an enzyme that breaks down NAD faster called NADase or CD38. That increases. So there's like all these things that are really stacking the deck against us making enough NAD. So we want to look for ways to increase NAD production. And we also want to look to inhibit CD38 or NADase so that we have more NAD around. So things like NMN or NR or niacin, the full flush nicotinic acid, are things that are going to boost NAD levels naturally.
Which is great. I actually supplement that, and I do feel a big difference in my energy levels on days that I do supplement. I supplement both NR and NMN.
Oh, great. Yeah. And then also these polyphenols, which happen to be high in the diets of these blue zones people that we talked about, think of like green tea as EGCG, red wine, resveratrol, onions and apples have quercetin, catechins in chocolate, pterostilbene in blueberries, fisetin, which I'm going to mention in strawberries, apigenin in parsley. These things, the last two, are the most potent, even though we always hear about resveratrol, quercetin, and they're decent, but they're nowhere near as good as fisetin and apigenin. Apigenin has a little bit of a sedative effect, which is great in the evening. So
I take it before sleep.
yeah, exactly. So if I was going to, plan this out, I would have Bicetin in the morning and I would have Apigenin in the evening.
Yeah.
And that's going to stack well with this idea of, okay, I'm boosting NAD levels, and then these polyphenols inhibit the CD38, the NADAs. So you're protecting more NAD. So this is like now the double whammy for the win.
Yeah.
And then you can add in some things that support the whole Krebs cycle, like PQQ and CoQ10. And also there's a mitochondrial antioxidant that may be the next new vitamin. Really exciting one called ergothioneine. And and it's going to be a key nutrient that is seen in the menstrual support product
that we're working on.
From Aggie.
So we're going to be the first. You got it first.
And it will support your energy levels. It's a more potent antioxidant than CoQ10, than vitamin C, than glutathione.
So antioxidants, great for skin.
Great for skin, great for the immune system. It's been shown it helps with recovery from exercise. So this is a really exciting nutrient that the whole world will be talking about. And Aggies.
In a few years when they catch up.
Yep, Aggie's on first. So
thanks to you, Shawn.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. And then the last one that I would mention is spermidine. And yes, spermidine is present in sperm. I always get asked that. And maybe you'll get your boyfriend saying like, hey, I'm helping you out. But
But
spermidine,
it's right?
it can be. So like there is like a fermented pure form that you can get now that you can bypass the kind of low percentage and the kind of gluten source of wheat. So you can get a pure form. I've been involved with one called Pyrimidine that is 100% pure and is fermented. So it's natural, vegan friendly. And spermidine is basically a fasting mimetic. So it actually increases autophagy. And autophagy is that cellular detox and cleanup. It's kind of like the little vacuum cleaner.
I call it the Marie Kondo of your body because she's like with the sweet.
Yeah, exactly. So
the cluttering, everything that doesn't need to be there.
Well, and the worst clutter is what's called senescent cells. So these are like kind of dying cells that are actually giving off signals that they're dying and decaying. And this actually puts your whole body in a process of thinking it's dying and decaying. The more of those senescent cells there are, like zombie cells, and there's a lot of terms for these. But if we can get what's called senolytics, which are things that, lysis means to cut, like, Latin. That means it's breaking down these things that need to be cleaned up and removed. Yeah. So spermidine is helping do that. And then the one last one I'd give that's now a pretty well-studied senolytic is AKG. And that is one of the intermediates in that Krebs cycle, also called citric acid cycle. So that would be like AKG, Bicetin, Apigenin, spermidine, ergothioneine, PQQ, CoQ10, NR, NMN, niacin. That's kind of like my ultimate how you kick ass with the mitochondria. That is the energy formula.
That's it. No, honestly, thank you so much for the summary. That's like I said, like you ask Shawn a question and he actually teaches you everything. You're like, wow, I'm definitely like appreciating that you hold nothing back. This book is incredible, guys. Honestly, the amount of information, the way it's organized with pictures and like tables and summaries, it makes it so easy to start biohacking. So thank you for writing the book and putting all that effort and so much love. Thank you for the energy behind everything you do. Yeah. You can tell that you care and you create the best supplements in the world from a place of, I just want to see people thrive instead of cutting corners and taking advantage of people that are suffering. And I'm here to cheer you on. I'm excited about what we're creating.
That's a key thing with ours. Like, we didn't get into like what makes a good supplement, but just super quick is there'll be no proprietary blends. We're going to list every single ingredient, the form, where it comes from, what the active is, what that percentage is. So its strength, its potency, the dose, like everything is clear, listed out, you know exactly what you're taking. There's no cutting corners, as you said. There's no crap. There's no lies. Like, I'm not trying to hide behind anything. And what we're making,
take it every single day.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. And I know that.
Yeah.
And I want my friends to take it.
Yeah. So we wouldn't want this to be just yet another product, because there's so many out there. Fairy dusting, right? That's what it's called. Shawn, thank you so much. Please follow Shawn on Instagram at Shawn Wells.
Yep. And then energyformula.com.
Please. And good luck on the course.
Oh,
Sounds exciting. And I can't wait to host you again soon.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.